Right, my babies. Uh, today's, it's the day for you, but it's the same day for me. I'm powering through. I only have two more videos to do, and then the book is finished. Look at this. I've finished the book. I think it will be at episode 415, maybe, will be the last one. And I got an Easter egg, but I'll read it to you in the next video. An Easter egg is literally like when at Easter we hide eggs and we go find them and they're hidden somewhere. At the end of the book, a person I know actually wrote me a quote, which I will read for you and kind of like maybe use to dissect some stuff. Why the fuck not? Here we go. Today's video, beliefs and asking questions about your goals, about your visions, checking the timeline in order to understand better the belief system that supports your growth, support, GOV, AWOSN or NS. I'm assuming it's شو اسمه governance. Whatever. The idea behind it is basically your beliefs and asking the questions about your goals and visions that basically allow you to see the timeline differently. My phone is ringing, so I'll be back in a second. Yeah, so my mom called me. Okay, so approaching our beliefs. The previous video I did was basically about how a feeling is basically telling you about a belief that you have. And weirdly so, most of the feelings that we notice are feelings that are not really like, I don't want to use the word positive, are feelings that are not really kind of like, when you're in a state of flow. I want to say, see, I didn't use the word feel or belief. I want to say that a state of flow is an actual feeling that we kind of like don't really, it's a feeling that allows us not to notice that we're in it. It kind of like detaches us and allows us to observe and kind of gives us the whole angle of observation where you kind of like seeing how things happen. And it's beautiful because like it ends when it ends. It doesn't end when you decide it. And kind of the same with everything else. You can reason yourself out of flow, and you can reason yourself out of a frustration, or you can reason yourself out of sadness. It doesn't really like handle the feeling itself. But let's just say the emotion attached to the feeling is different. So maybe here, like, feeling is there to tell you about belief, should have been probably the emotions are triggering, are telling you about the feeling as well, right? It makes sense. There's a beautiful chart that's here somewhere. I could find it for you. But I discussed it once before. It's like the different kinds of emotions that we feel and the feelings associated with it and all that good stuff. But it's that here, it's this in this note, it's basically like, look, it's beliefs and asking questions about your goals and visions and checking the timeline in order to maintain better the belief system. Because our subconscious could be considered as the system that kind of like is established for us to build the reality that we have on top of it. So, how do you establish the belief system or understand your belief system? And it's natural, it's just basically questions. But like you kind of always have an answer to the question you ask yourself. But when you're asking a question about something that you see in front of you that you don't really, it's not a direct correlation with yourself. It's because what's in front of you, or what's in La La Land, what's in the world, the real world, what we call, is a reflection of you, and what you did is reflected. It's an outcome. It's an output from you. And so here I mentioned timelines in order to understand better the belief system that supports your movement. Oh, it supports your movement is basically, it's not governance. Yeah, my handwriting is awesome, but keep in mind, most of the times I'd be walking when I get like one of those epiphany ideas and I go like, I need to write it. And sometimes I actually write it while I'm actually walking, or I jump to the side of the road to kind of just go pop, 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 pop. So how is there a better way for us to kind of like alert ourselves to the proximity of our goals and visions? Is there a better way for us to understand our sense of direction without our direct involvement? Because I really think our direct involvement is a form of judgment. And our direct involvement is an opinion that we have. Like, is this where I want to be kind of stuff? But like, does it really matter where you are right now as long as what you want to kind of create is being created? And those are maybe stages in dissecting our psyche as we like move closer to the things that we're trying to like interact with. Are they? I don't know. It really feels like we always have to kind of like engage with ourselves until there's nothing left to engage with, so that something new pops up, or at the very least, kind of like your mind goes, if you're still that interested, maybe this would be something that matters, because according to your mind, the conscious mind that you're directly interacting with, there's stuff that's all the way hidden inside that's kind of like waiting and appealing for the better side of you. And kind of like going, oh, okay, so we established this at one point, and this is what we've been building on top of. And why would we want to come close to this? All we want to do is change the shape of what we're building in front of us. But if I were to use the kind of like the structure of a movable building as an example, uh, well, I can use two examples, a movable building and a tree. Let's start with the building. When it comes to the building, the more layers up you want to build, so you're further from the ground, right? You kind of have to ask yourself, would the bottom floor be able to maintain it? And to get to the bottom floor, you kind of have to go through all the floors. And I think that's the mind map that we're trying to kind of create, that we're trying to establish. Because sometimes all we do is stick to the base, and we kind of like keep working around the base and like supporting it and building stuff, building it as a stronger support for whatever we can grow. But then again, like we're limited to our scope of vision, because ultimately, my bad, because ultimately, if I want to go for a 50-story building, then it doesn't matter how strong the base is. If it's too narrow, then the building would be basically susceptible to moving side by side. So you kind of have to make it stronger. You probably have to make it deeper. It really helps for us to kind of create something with something in mind, or at least allow us to understand why is the building important. And keep in mind, for me, I don't really consider anytime you're building something in your mind, you're not kind of doing a building. What you're doing is a community where like there are hundreds of buildings probably, and some small houses within the community, and sometimes skyscrapers, and just like a vast, intricate network that your mind connects to. And so the bigger buildings could be like the depth, the things that you dove deeper in. For example, you need more mental capacity when it comes to, if I want to study programming, I need to be better and adequately, and I need better aptitude when it comes to like programs, code, and all that kind of stuff. But if I'm only interested in kind of like painting in the sense of like I want to be able to enjoy art, then I don't really have to like develop such a detailed perception of being an artist, because like most of the detail is in the actual technique of painting probably, or sculpting, or whatever you choose to be. And everything you kind of like, you have to understand the base of which you're building on top of. And I feel like the beliefs are the actual base of where we're trying to go. And sometimes you kind of like ingrain an extra belief in your system that allows you to open like a channel towards something else, like a full blown space where you can go dive deeper into something and just bring it to the world, explore your reality through it, and then basically reflect it on the world that's in front of you. though it's often that you kind of require other beliefs to go. Like if I have like four small buildings and I want to build a skyscraper, there's a high chance I might have to get rid of two of these buildings, maybe, right? And in your mind, everything is either supporting each other or kind of standing in the way. And there's the harmony of the forest, which I mentioned earlier. If I were to use a tree, it's like a big tree. You can plant two trees next to each other. Some trees grow faster, and some trees take their time. But the trees that take their time eventually kind of like remove everything in their surroundings because they grow, they grow, they grow, they grow, and they expand and they expand. And then the small trees that were planted next to them kind of eventually get like pushed to the side. And I feel it's the same with our beliefs. And sometimes we don't notice how heavy our beliefs are, especially like how heavily they guide us. And when we're approaching something new that kind of requires that is not really supported by that belief system, maybe at one point it's standing in the way. So the beliefs that we actually interact with on a day-to-day basis are not really explored by us except for the values that we try to like put in the world and the feelings that we're receiving from the world after we do something. Here's an example. I was talking to my mom and I said something that hurt her feelings. I didn't mean to hurt her feelings, but in a way, my approach towards the something that I said was reflected back to me because I believed something a certain kind of way, which doesn't really like comply with how she sees the world. I don't know, man. Kind of feels like what I'm trying to do is establish why some things that already exist in us are not necessarily things that are going to support, are things that supported us so far, but if we want to change, we can only change by realizing that they don't really support us. And I think asking questions about goals and visions and values allow us to reestablish where we are in terms of like the groundwork that exists and allows us to kind of like reformulate where we'd want to go, or at the very least, what new things to plant or what new buildings to plan for in order to understand how we're moving, how we'll be moving in the future, and the cute stuff like that. So, video.